Can you believe it's April already? I've got a ton of seeds that I still need to start. Am I too late? Am I going to miss out on having a wonderful gardening season? Relax. It is 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost. There's a ton of seeds that you still need to start. And yeah, okay, you may have missed out on the window of starting peppers, maybe even tomatoes, eggplants from seed, but we'll talk about that as well. All is not lost. You're still going to have a wonderful gardening season. Hey folks, if we haven't met before, my name is Tara. I live and garden in the Bay Area, and you are watching episode 5 of a seed starting masterclass series. Now, this is that critical window when you're going to be starting things like beans, corn, squash, cucumbers, melons, maybe even some okra. But here's the catch. If you don't get things right in this window, you could have some very weak plants that could potentially be stunted forever. But real quick about those tomatoes and peppers and eggplants that maybe you haven't quite started from seed yet, don't worry about it. Just go to your nearby nursery and pick up a couple of plants, a couple of each. I have a friend actually who grows maybe 2 tomato plants, 2 pepper plants, 2 eggplants, and she produces tons from just those couple of plants that she gets, often more than I would produce from an equivalent number of plants on my property. And I start a lot more plants from seed. But because of that, I kind of spread out my attention across, 20, 30 plants. And she focuses just on those 2, and those 2 are really, really productive. So yeah, the less plants you have, the more care you can give. So maybe that's the way to go. But if you really want to start from seed, let's talk about the 2 to 4 week window, because this is a critical window. Okay, so today let's talk about what makes this 2 to 4 week window a little bit different than the others that we've discussed in prior episodes. We'll also talk about what seeds you can start right now, what crops you should be direct sowing versus starting from seed. And I've got a strategy that I want to share with you about my beans and corn. Little hint, seed snails are involved. And then the last succession of cool season crops also that some of us might be able to do, especially if you've got a long growing season. You want to consider succession planting, not just cool weather crops, but also some of your warm season crops. And then let's also not forget about flowers and herbs that you should be starting right now. And of course, we're going to talk about how to avoid those stunted seedlings with proper lighting and care. First, let me show you what seeds I am going to be sowing today. Let's start with zucchini, the quintessential summer crop. I've got a yellow variety as well as a green variety. The green variety is called Danja. It's the first time I am growing this variety. I'm excited for it because it's supposed to be super productive as well as disease resistant. Zucchini is especially prone to things like powdery mildew and mosaic virus. This one has a decent amount of protection against those diseases, and so does the Golden Glory, which is a yellow variety and an early variety too, if I remember right. Now over here we've got cucumbers. I usually grow the parthenocarpic cucumbers. Those are the ones that don't require pollination. And this one is a Japanese cucumber. It's called unagi. Again, the first time I'm growing this. I've had a lot of success growing Japanese cucumbers, and so growing them again. I've got melon. This is supposed to be a very productive one as well, a smaller size one with the unfortunate name Minnesota midget, but it's supposed to produce, I think, something like 4 or 5 per plant, which is pretty awesome. And then I have got a new watermelon that I'm super excited about. This one is called Mini Love. And for those of you that watch my channel for my green stalks, this is one of them that I'm going to be growing on my GreenStalk vertical planter. Now, this is an F1 variety, and you'll notice that I've got many seed varieties from Johnny's. I usually go to Johnny's for my F1s. They've got, I think, the best F1 hybrids on the market. A little more expensive than the others, but always some great properties like disease resistance and productivity. So yeah, worth spending the few extra bucks for it. Now, this is an interesting one as well. This is an Armenian cucumber. It's technically not a cucumber. I think it's more in like the melon family, but it tastes exactly like a cucumber. And it is a very long cucumber. And the nice thing about it, never goes bitter. So that's the other thing about the Japanese varieties that I've grown as well, is they don't go bitter, which is a common problem. Now over here, I'm also starting my winter squash. Now, for those of you that don't know, the difference between winter squash and summer squash does not have to do about when they grow. It has to do about storage. So the summer squashes, you usually just harvest them and eat them during summer. But the winter squashes are the ones that you can store over winter. So they take much longer to grow, and you want to let them completely mature, and then you harvest them when the skin is hard, and then you can store them through the winter. So that's the difference. But they definitely need to be planted in summer. So I am growing a butternut squash variety, and this one is a very tasty variety. It's called kabocha. Now moving over here, these are corn and beans, and I usually start them I direct seed them in my garden because they are very tricky in the sense that they grow their roots very, very fast, and they grow tall and big very fast, especially corn. And even though corn has a fibrous root system, and so it does transplant fairly easily, it just grows way too fast and too easily, frankly. So I'll be planting those directly, but I'm actually going to try a little different method this time. I'm going to start them in what's called seed snails. And for those of you that are not aware, I do have a video on how to do that. It's basically you take a strip of a mailer envelope or something like that from Amazon. You put some soil in it, and then you kind of roll it like a cinnamon roll, and you plant the seeds on the top, and then the roots grow nice and straight and downward. Anyway, I will put a link to that video in case you're interested. I've had some great success so far growing in seed snails and beans as well. Now, beans, unlike corn, have a very strong taproot system that grows straight down and grows really, really fast. So this one will have quite a bit of trouble transplanting if you're not careful. And if you break that taproot, your plant is gone. So you got to be very careful with these, and I do prefer to direct sow, but I'm planning to do the seed snail mainly because I want to get a little bit of a head start, and the weather is still a little bit iffy. And then finally, not finally, I got yet one more here, but sunflowers, that's the other thing that I like to direct sow. Zinnias as well. I haven't brought the seed packet here, but I will be starting zinnias maybe from in a seed snail as well, and then I'll be planting some directly too. And then finally, okra. Now, this one requires super warm soil. This is probably the last one that I plant out of all my summer vegetables, because if you plant this when the weather is not warm enough yet, I think it's got to be like 90 something degrees, your soil temperature. But if you plant this in the soil before the soil is warm enough, your okra plant will get stunted. So don't do it. Plant directly. That prefers to be direct sown. Now, if you want to know what seeds you should be starting right now in that 2 to 4 week window before your last frost, or even you can do it by month, go to your local Master Gardener chapter if you're in the United States. So just look up your zip code and Master Gardener chapter, and it should point you to a website. All of the Master Gardener websites have a planting schedule depending on your gardening area. So go ahead and download that. It'll tell you exactly what you should be planting from seed, what you should be planting indoors versus direct seeding, when you should be transplanting. All of that information in great detail is available in the planting schedule. The other place you can find a planting schedule is Farmer's Almanac, and I'll put a link to the website on the screen. But go ahead and type in your zip code, and it should be able to give you a planting schedule. Now, the nice thing about the Master Gardener website or resource, I am a Master Gardener, by the way, is it's a free resource. And when I say resource, I mean they've got a hotline, not a hotline, it's an email thing that you can send them questions and they will answer in great detail any kind of planting question. Can you imagine that? How often do you have free resources like that? And they're always very thoughtful in their responses, and it's always local to your area. So it's a great resource, you guys. Check out your local Master Gardener website. So just a real quick recap. Why is this 2 to 4 week window so critical? Number one, the seeds are very large, as you can see, for most of the seeds that can be started in this window. And as a result of it, they germinate actually fairly quickly. The weather is warmer, and they grow really, really fast, both top as well as roots. And because of that, they hate being transplanted. So if you are going to be starting from seed, which you can for the most part, you just have to be a little bit extra careful, because that baby stage is a very short phase and there is no recovery from it if things go wrong. So something like tomatoes, as an example, they take a decent while, 6 weeks, to grow from the baby stage to a size that you can transplant. And there's a chance that you can sort of recover them if they're looking yellow and wilty. They won't get stunted. These guys will get stunted. Cucumbers, beans, squash, they'll get stunted and then there's no recovery. No matter how hard you try to baby them, you usually can't bring them back. And so it's best to just kind of start over. That's the good news. You can very often start over because the seeds are large, they germinate fast, and they grow quickly. All right, so let's address the question, when do you direct sow versus when do you start indoors? I actually have a master gardener friend, and I was asking her once, how do you decide which seeds you should be starting indoors versus which seeds you should be direct sowing? And she said, I start everything indoors. My point is that it's really a choice. All the seeds that I showed you so far, all of them can be direct seeded in your garden as soon as the weather is warm enough, as soon as the soil is warm enough. Now, the reason my friend starts everything indoors is because she's got a lot of pest pressure in her garden, and things like a juicy little cucumber seedling or a lovely little bean sprout are so delicious and tasty to pretty much every little critter out there. So yeah, if you've got a lot of pest pressure or you just don't want to take the trouble to protect your baby plants as they're germinating, you're better off starting them indoors, getting them to a decent size where they're able to withstand pest pressure a lot better, and then moving them outdoors. Now, the other reason is also if you're kind of on that cusp window where the weather is going from cool to warm and you've got those up and down days, you may want to start indoors, just because if you put them outside too prematurely, or if you try to start the seeds in soil that is not warm enough, the seeds will take a lot longer to germinate and a lot of them could rot off. Beans are a great example of seeds that will rot in cold soil. So for my very first succession of beans, I always like to start indoors, put them in the soil, and then for my next succession, which is usually about 4 to 6 weeks later, I would start that directly outside. All right, let's go outside and get some seeds planted, and I want to share with you some tips and tricks on how to plant the seeds, as well as how to make sure that they stay nice and healthy through germination, as well as growing into nice little starts that you can put in your garden. But before we do that, I also wanted to, I forgot to tell you actually, I am starting another succession of lettuce and radish and cilantro. And I'm doing an interesting experiment this year. I'm actually going to be growing them indoors in my sunroom, not outdoors. At this time of year, it's getting really warm very quickly. And if I plant things like lettuce or cilantro, it's going to bolt, it's going to produce just a few leaves, and it's going to produce a flower spike, and it's gone. So I'm going to try growing indoors. I've actually grown one batch of radish indoors very successfully. I'll show that to you briefly, but the weather is still a little bit cool. The real test, obviously, is to put these through the hot weather and see whether I can still get them to grow indoors. But let's now go ahead and plant some seeds. All right, let's go ahead and start some seeds, shall we? But before we do that, a couple of things. First off, I've already gone ahead and filled up these trays. Now, I am just using plain old regular potting soil. I haven't bothered to sift it. Remember how in the previous episodes, for those of you that watched it, I actually made sure that my seed starting mix was nice and fine, because we had tiny seeds that needed to be able to push through. These seeds, they're big honkin' seeds. They're just going to go right into regular potting soil, twigs and all, and they're going to be able to push through no problem at all. I'm also not going to worry much about how sterile the soil is. This is actually very rich soil. It's got a lot of compost in it, and my homemade compost. So it's almost like worm castings. That's how rich it is. But that's not a problem either, because it's not going to stay indoors for too long. The weather is beautiful. I'm going to be bringing it out fairly quickly. Diseases and things like that should not be a big issue with these seeds, as long as I can manage them just for a little while they're indoors. All right, let's go ahead and plant the seeds. Now, the reason I've got two kinds of trays over here, the larger trays and the smaller trays, is because I've got lots of seeds that are a little bit old, 2022. One of them was actually 2020. So I like to plant a lot of seeds when I've got older seeds, because I'm not sure how many will take. And the reason I've got the bigger trays over here is because I can put a whole bunch of seeds in there, and then, I can gently ease them out as they start to grow, if they grow. Now, for the smaller ones, I'm going to be using the ones that are pretty recent. So this year, last year kind of seeds. So I know that they're going to have a really high germination rate. So I will put the right number of seeds in each of these containers, these smaller containers, and hopefully I'll get most of them to germinate versus in the larger containers, just going to dump a whole bunch of seeds and then just keep my fingers crossed that a few of them will come up. And as soon as they come up, I'm going to dig them out and I'm going to transplant them into their own container. Now, this is equivalent to doing, the paper baggie, Ziploc baggie method where you dampen a paper napkin, you put the seeds in the paper napkin, wrap it up, put it in a Ziploc bag and wait for it to germinate. I don't like that method so much only because I just forget and then the roots kind of grow into the paper napkin. So I'm doing it in soil instead. But basically what I'm doing is I'm pre-germinating the seeds before they grow into their actual container. All right, let's get some seeds. I've already labeled them, as you can see, because if you don't label, you will forget. So I've already put the labels and we'll go ahead and plant them and I'll give you some tips on how to plant those larger seeds. Let's start with this mini love watermelon. I'm so excited to grow this one. This is not cheap. These seeds were like 11 something for 15 seeds, so almost $1 a seed. But they are supposed to be really good for the GreenStalk small watermelons, very productive. So fingers crossed that they will grow well. I'm going to plant just one seed per container because it says over here, one of the nice things about Johnny's is it says what the germination rate is. I don't want to lose that seed. It says they're 97%. So I can expect almost all of them to germinate. So I'll be very judicious. I'll plant 4 plants exactly. And as soon as they germinate, I'm actually going to plant another batch. I kind of like to do the succession thing. I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket because what if something happens and I mess up and all my watermelon seedlings die? I've still got some more left. So the way that you do it is you plant the seed to a depth that is about twice the size of the seed. Now, there's a really good reason for this. People don't often talk about why you want to do this. The reason you want to do this is because as the seed germinates, the little seed that is the seed head that is on top of the plant that is germinating needs to come off. And if you don't plant it sufficiently deep, when it pops up, that seed head is on and the plant is not able to push it off, and then it results in the plant very often dying off. But if you plant it deep enough, then that friction when the plant pulls itself out of the soil causes that seed head, helps that seed head to come off, and also helps keep the seed head moist, and that also helps that helmet head, as they call it, not to form. So yeah, definitely don't skimp on the depth. It's not going to grow any faster if you plant it up higher. So that's about double the depth. Oh, by the way, do you love my potting bench? This is actually a really new potting bench that I got from Vego Garden. I did a full review on it not too long ago. It's even got a sink. It's so cute. It's got storage. I am loving it. It has really changed up my seed starting game. The workflow is so seamless. I've got everything in one place over here. Anyway, the next one I'm going to be planting is cucumbers. Now, like I said, you can be germinating these seeds in paper napkins, and then as soon as you see that little shoot coming out, you can take and plant it. And yes, I do worry when I do that method that the roots will grow into the paper napkin. One way around that is to use the coffee filter method. I did a little video on this, but really briefly what that is you first put the seed in a coffee filter and fold it up, and then you put it in a paper towel and fold it up, and then you wet it down, and then you put it in a Ziploc bag. So what happens is, as the seed germinates, it's not able to push its roots through the coffee filter as easily as it would through a paper towel. The problem with the coffee filter is if you use it by itself, you might say, why don't I just use a coffee filter? The coffee filter dries out very quickly. So especially if you're using things like seed starting mats, the heat, it dries out. Even if it's in a Ziploc bag, it will dry out the seed very quickly. So you want to use both the coffee filter as well as the paper napkin. So that's a tip for you. Now, these unagi Japanese cucumbers, like I said, are parthenocarpic. So you do not need to have a male and a female to get it fertilized, which is really nice. And these Japanese cucumbers, I've found a lot of them are not bitter. So that's another thing that I really like about them. The worst thing is when you have a cucumber that you've been waiting for a long time for it to produce, and then it finally produces, and then you bite into it, and it's got that horrible bitter taste. And you do not want to eat bitter cucumbers. They are mildly toxic, is what I've read. So, yeah, avoid that. If something tastes bitter or something is not to your liking, that's nature's way of telling you, do not eat it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and finish these up. I've actually got some bean seeds. The other thing, oh, I wanted to tell you guys about this. Bean seeds, the thing about them is very often you can soak them for a few hours and then plant it. That's perfectly fine. The problem, though, is what I've found is that bean seeds become very delicate when you soak them. And when you put them in the soil after soaking them, say, for, I don't know, 4, 8 hours or whatever, they do tend to rot more easily in the soil. So I just plant my bean seeds directly. I mean, in the worst case, I would lose like a day of germination time, which is perfectly fine with me for the most part. So yeah, bean seeds, don't save yourself the work. Don't do the pre-soaking or anything. Just plant it directly in soil. Now maintain moist soil until it germinates. And that goes not just for bean seeds, that's for any seeds at all. Oh, let me actually show you guys how I do the multiple sowing thing and I've got bad germination rate, or at least I know that the seeds will have poor germination. I do this, by the way, also for things like lettuce and cilantro. I plant a whole bunch of seeds, and then with cilantro, I often even let it grow like that in a big bunch, and then I harvest a whole clump at a time. But with lettuce, I often separate out the seedlings, and then I plant them into separate containers. You can do this cut and come again method with lettuce as well if you're doing a bigger container where you plant a lot of seeds, and then they all come up, and then you just sort of trim off the leaves and eat a few at a time, and that way you can keep the lettuce coming for a long period. But I'm going to be doing the lettuce where I'm growing it indoors, so I will actually separate it out carefully and plant only a few seeds because I don't want too many little plants growing in one container indoors. It just becomes much more prone to pests. And since we're talking about lettuce, let's do the lettuce first. So Buttercrunch is one of my favorite lettuce varieties, and it's actually relatively heat tolerant as well compared to some of the other varieties that I have grown. So just take a little pinch like this, sprinkle it around. Don't need to be too precious or anything about it. And then I just sort of lightly scrape it into the soil. Now I am going to squirt some water over it as well, but that's pretty much it. Lettuce does need light to germinate, so you don't want to bury it too deep. So that double the seed depth thing does not apply to lettuce. Make sure you check the packet, you guys. Some seeds need light to germinate, some do not. Now with radish, I'm going to plant just a few. Now radish actually is super hardy when you transplant it when it's very young. If it gets a little too big and it starts to want to form that root, then you do not want to transplant it anymore. So there's a myth that's busted for you. You can transplant radish and you can transplant it very successfully. Now, I wasn't paying attention because I'm talking too much while I'm doing this, and I'm going to have to actually get a little bit of soil because I didn't ensure that the right depth was maintained, but you can always just dust a little bit of soil on it. In fact, let me do that right now. Radish is also one of those things you do want to cover it because you don't want it to hold on to its little seed head as it's trying to germinate. The other thing about radish also is the roots tend to kind of hang around the surface. So you do want to push it down nicely so that the roots, when they start to grow, they hold on to firm soil and they grow downward. All right, now I'm going to be planting some kabocha squash. Such a delicious squash, but I wanted to show you how large the seeds are. Now, these seeds will take much longer to germinate if you don't do this little trick that I'm going to show you. And I've showed this to you in previous episodes as well. But I am going to compromise the seed coat by using a little nail clipper. You can use a nail file as well. And just kind of clip. Now, this is where the leaves are, so I tend to do it over here. Some people say, you know, do it over here. I'm kind of nervous because this is where the root comes out. You can do it a little bit, I guess. But yeah, you just want to make sure that water is easily able to get into it, and that will cause the seedling to wake up and start to grow. If you don't do it, the seed has got to soak, and it takes a long time to soak. It's going to take at least a week longer than it normally would if you don't compromise the seed coat like this. So I'm going to go ahead and plant actually all my kabocha squash because, okay, maybe half of it because I've got a lot. I'm going to plant at least about 10 of them in one of these little containers because I don't know anything about the germination rate of this thing. I think it's actually pretty low because it is 2022. I don't know how many years kabocha seeds last. So compromise all of these and then we will plant them at a depth which is double the size of the seed. Now that's a pretty big seed. So I'm going to be using this little dibbler thing. This is actually from GreenStalk. It's a new product of theirs. But yeah, you can actually see the measurements on it. So 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inches. So I'm going to do it at maybe a little over an inch or so. Where's my kabocha squash? Right here. There we go. Something like that. I'm going to pop it in. I just put it in sideways. Some people say, oh, you got to put the growing tip in. Other people say, oh, no, actually, it's the other way around. The seedling will find its way. So just kind of put it on its side, push it all the way in, and cover it up nicely. With my okra, I'm going to just dump all of these seeds. I mean, 2020. How likely is it that they're going to grow? I don't know. I think okra actually is one of those that does not have a very long lifetime. So you've got to use up your okra seeds pretty quickly. And 6 years, I think, is way too long for okra. Cilantro, actually, I saved seeds, and I know they're good because I've grown them already. I've got a little video that I will put a link to, which is super popular on how to grow cilantro from seed. I'm not going to follow any of those rules here. I'm just telling you in advance. I'm just going to plop some seeds in here and hope that... Yeah, I think I've become just a little bit overconfident when it comes to growing cilantro because I kind of learned the knack of how to grow it. So normally what I would do is I would actually soak these seeds for a few hours, and then after planting them, covering them up, I would put a weight on it for a few days because that actually helps the seedling grow its roots nice and strong downward. Without the weight, they all sort of pop up and half of them have their roots popping up. But I'm only going to be saving a few of these cilantro plants to grow indoors, so I'm not too worried. Now, I mentioned about flowers and herbs. Let's talk about herbs first. Most herbs, including basil, which is one of the fastest growing, take forever to grow from seed. These are the ones that you should have started like 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. But if you haven't started them, then just go to the big box store or nursery and pick up a multi-pack of little seedlings. That is really the best way to get your herbs growing. Now, for me, with basil, because I've already got basil plants, what I did was I cut off some little shoots from them and I put them in some water, and I am hoping, yeah, actually I see some roots have developed. At least 3 of them. I don't know what happened to this guy, but 3 of them have developed roots. So I am going to be planting these in these little containers, and these are actually going to be my outdoor basil eventually. I've got a whole bunch of them growing on my kitchen windowsill and growing beautifully, and I always do that. I always love growing basil indoors because it's so easy to just snip a little leaf here or there for pizza or whatever. But yeah, I love growing these in my GreenStalk garden, my vertical garden as well. So I'll be planting these in these containers over here, these larger containers, and I'm going to let them grow for quite a while until they're ready to go in my GreenStalk. And they'll be quite happy in this container for however long I want to keep them. As long as I keep trimming off the leaves and using them and keeping them nice and short, they don't mind being in smaller containers. Yeah, I'll give them a little bit of fertilizer every once in a while. Now, flower. Now, most of the larger seed flowers actually do better if you direct sow them. But because I'm doing it a little bit quicker, I want to get a little bit of a head start. I'm starting them indoors. These are sunflowers I've already started. You can see they've been reaching for the light. That's why light is so important, because fast-growing seeds like these sunflowers, they get leggy very, very quickly, which is happening to these guys. So I've got to improve the light situation for them. I'm actually going to be moving them into my greenhouse, and then they should be doing fine. But if you're growing indoors, light is just the most important thing for this phase 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost, the kinds of seeds that you're going to be growing, light is the most important thing. All right, speaking of lights, let's go inside and talk a little bit more about indoor growing of my radish and lettuce and spinach and all those things, and how I'm going to be doing that. And I also want to show you some lights that I am using, which I think are really, really good. So I talked about the lettuce and spinach and radish and cilantro that I'm going to be growing indoors when the heat of summer hits. And I also wanted to show you the radish that I already grew indoors. It grew really well, but there was a bit of a problem that I need to resolve for this next batch that I'm going to plant. All right, there it is. Look at this radish, you guys. Grown completely indoors. It is ready to harvest. But the reason it's kind of dark over here, and I'm glad there's some daylight, but the reason it's dark is because I went on vacation, and when I came back, these lights were dead. Nothing that I could do. I thought it was the smart switch that was wrong, or the cables were not connected. I don't know. I looked at everything, and this light is dead, or these 3 lights. At least one of them is dead, and that's why the linking is failing. So, and this has happened before. I've actually got an entire graveyard of these lights. These are shop lights. I don't know where my husband got them from. I think he got some deal online, but they were supposed to last for years and years and years, but they are gone in like a couple of years. One after the other, they die, and then I just have to throw them away, which is such a shame. Anyway, I'm upgrading to a better quality light. Ta-da! These are grow lights from a company called Barrina. They sent them to me. These are the TX72 grow lights. I actually got a 4-pack, and I've used Barrina products before. They're actually very economical, but they are top notch, and the lights are fantastic. These are actually full spectrum grow lights. So the ones that I just showed you are just kind of like shop lights. So they're used for seed germination, but these lights, they can be used all the way through leafy growth and fruiting stage and flowering stage, because they have this full spectrum of lights. And because I'm going to be growing root vegetables and things indoors, I think these will work out a lot better. Now, I know that this is a really good brand because I actually used another product of theirs. So this is the T10 vertical grow light. Now, this is another full spectrum grow light, and it really lights up the space. It's actually got this cute little foot switch that you can use to turn the light on and off. It's off now, and look at that, how bright it is. Now, the Barrina lights are actually surprisingly budget-friendly lights. And they've also given me a discount code, which I will put in the description if you want to try them out. I highly recommend them. They've got great reviews on Amazon if you want to do your own research as well. Now, while good lighting is probably one of the most important things that you should be doing for your indoor plants to make sure that they are not stunted, especially these plants that grow super fast, you want to have really good grow light systems. There is one more thing, and that is to take your plants outside for a little bit of sunshine every day. No matter how hard you work on providing great lighting and pest management and all the good things that you do as a steward of your plants when they are growing indoors, nothing matches what Mother Nature can do for you, especially the brilliant sun. Even if it's too cold at nights where you are, just taking your plants out for an hour or 2 every day gives it the benefit of that sunshine that will kill off any diseases and will just help your plants grow that much faster. Now, this is also a process that's called hardening off, where you are transitioning your plants outdoors. Remember, that growing window is so quick. You want your plants to be well and ready to be going in the soil when you're ready to put them in. So giving them a little bit of sunshine every day, and you can extend those hours to 1 hour on day 1, 2 hours on day 2, and so on and so forth, until it gets to a point where, say, your nighttime temperatures are now well above 50 degrees at night. Then you can leave your plants outdoors and you don't have to worry about it anymore until they're ready to go in the ground. So we'll talk all about transitioning your plants outdoors and how to know when it's time to put them in the ground, and then all the things that you need to do to establish them and give them a really good start in your garden, in the soil. But that would be episode 7. If you want to go back and check all the other episodes in the series so far, check out the playlist over here. Thanks for hanging out with me, and have a wonderful gardening season.